As we go closer and closer to Christmas, more of the critical players are coming into focus. Earlier, we heard from Isaiah, who set Israel on its path to anticipate the birth of a Messiah. Last week, we talked about John the Baptist, who, although he came along as Jesus was an adult, John the Baptist laid the groundwork for Jesus' ministry. Now we talk about a little bit about Joseph, Saint Joseph. I'm not quite sure why he's a saint, because what do we know about him? Practically nothing. He was Mary's husband for sure, and he was present at the birth of Jesus. He's one of those little figures in the manger scene. He was a descendant of David, which connected Jesus to the great King David. That is, if you believe that Joseph was, in fact, Jesus' father. We think of him as a carpenter. The Greek word means artisan who works with wood or stone, but it's a bit vague. So we can imagine Jesus growing up, learning how to be a carpenter or a stonemason, learning a craft with his father. Now, Joseph was from Nazareth, as we know, and Nazareth was a very, very small town, maybe 400 people at the most. So in order to make a living, he would have traveled to larger towns in the region. Earlier, before Jesus was born, the Romans destroyed a large city nearby, and they rebuilt it as a Roman outpost. But still, this region was a hotbed of Roman resistance. Judas the Zealot, not Judas Iscariot, but Judas the Zealot, was active in the towns around Nazareth, stirring up trouble. And periodically, the Roman army would descend on the area and wreak havoc, killing dissidents, even crucifying and leaving people up on crosses, destroying homes and stores, setting fires to buildings. The region was constantly in turmoil and was often driven into depression. So it's likely that Joseph would have rebuilt the homes and the stores that were destroyed, perhaps some of the synagogues too. But also he would have been forced to work as a day laborer because the place was just constantly in economic depression. Perhaps as a teenager and a young adult, Jesus too would have worked rebuilding those houses and the synagogues, but also worked as a day laborer to contribute to the household income. Now, most of this is inferred from the history of the region, not from the Bible. But according to Luke, Joseph was with Mary when Jesus was 12, and the family went to the temple in Jerusalem. And when the crowd from Nazareth started back for Nazareth, Jesus got left behind. But that's really, and so they went back and they got him. But that's really the last we hear of Joseph. Perhaps he died young. Perhaps he followed Jesus when he was on his ministry. Perhaps he sulked in his workshop because Jesus gave up his career as a carpenter to become an itinerant preacher. We just really don't know. We don't know anything about Joseph after Jesus was 12. But this week, let's turn to Mary. You know, when I was young, I rarely thought about Mary, except when we were setting up our little manger scene every Christmas, and I would get into this argument about where to put Mary and Joseph and all the wise men and the shepherds and the angels in our little manger scene. I gave Mary little thought until I was in my late 20s. It was then that I was fully introduced to Mary, Mary, the mother of Jesus. It seems odd, but you see, I had been raised as a Presbyterian in a Jewish neighborhood. And I'd gone to a Presbyterian college. I'd gone to a Presbyterian seminary. But December 8th, 1978, I remember the date, that was my first day to work at the University of San Francisco, which is a Jesuit university up on the hill. When I showed up my first day, the place was completely empty. No students, no teachers. The offices and the classrooms were all empty. I began to wonder if this was a way to telling me that this job wasn't going to work out and maybe I should just go home. But finally, I stumbled on a janitor. And I asked him, where is everybody?